I think all of us as parents worry about raising kids that quit too easily. And every time something is difficult, every time something's hard, and every time something uncomfortable, we should we just push them? Should we quote unquote make them do it? Or do we just like back off and just say, well, whatever you want? And I think there's gotta be a middle ground, right? And I think Sarah and I have stumbled upon what that middle ground looks like and how it feels, even though we're still working out the kinks ourselves with our own kids. And so in today's episode, we're going to talk about how you can know if you need to back off, or maybe you need to push a little harder, right? And also how this kind of conflict can actually produce so much more intimacy and connection, and just like help you and your kid better understand who they are and what kind of relationship you want to have with any kind of topic that comes up. So we're going to give you clear, specific steps on how to better understand that and do this differently, especially as all of these activities, that are popping up, coming up with summer and all that kind of stuff. We want to make sure you're equipped and confident on knowing how to handle that better. So if you haven't done it already, take a moment to definitely review and comment. We love those 5-star reviews. Would love to hear how this podcast in particular helps you. And maybe if you have some thoughts about how you do this, would love you to share those as well. If you need some help and you're saying, man, I just need some extra support, I'd love some coaching from Kyle, reach out to me at kyle@artofraisinghumans.com. And I'd love to connect with you over a Zoom call to see if we're a good fit. So without further ado, take a moment, sit back and get ready to listen on what we should do. Should we push our kids, or do we need to back off?
Welcome to the Art of Raising Humans.
The Art of Raising Humans is a podcast designed to support, equip, and encourage parents on how to create long-lasting, deeply connected relationships with their kids that's free from fear and shame. Come join us on the journey. Hello, and welcome to the Art of Raising Humans. I'm Kyle.
Hi there, I'm Sara.
And Sarah, something that I've been hearing a lot from parents that I'm coaching, is there is this constant kind of tension, this kind of push and pull when it comes to raising kids about when do we give our kids a little push and when do we back off, all too often, I know for us, this came about because I would have this idea of like, the kids need to learn how to persevere. They need to learn how to like overcome these fears. And, not everything in life is going to be easy. And even though you don't like it, do it anyway. But then you would come in with a different, perspective, which was like, yeah, but they need to also listen to themselves and know themselves. And maybe they don't want to do that or don't like doing it. And they need to be able to say no and have the freedom to do that, But I think that causes not only tension within the individual, my perspective was kind of just one way, but then it can also cause a lot of problems in a marriage too, because we both feel we can get kind of entrenched in each other's perspective and feel
like you have to balance the other person.
Yeah. Like the other one's being way too pushy. I need to totally back off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think the main fear is we're going to raise kids who are constantly just saying no to everything. This is my mind. No to everything that's hard. And if anything's not fun, they're just going to say no to it. And that's the fear I have. And it's this fear that goes into the future. What kind of human am I raising in this world? And you can see how it spirals.
Yeah, I think if I were to summarize it, I'd say I think all of us, no matter what side you find yourself on, our big fear, what we're looking to is the future, right? I want to raise a child who can stick with things even when it's hard. But then how do I do that? How do I also raise a child who knows when to quit? Because you see people who just persevere and they should have jumped ship 3 years ago. They stayed in that job too long. They stayed in that relationship too long. They, because they felt like they had to just stay in there and be committed. So it's this, man, I value both sides. How do I raise this kid who can navigate this? And then we feel all this pressure to perfect it with our 4-year-old.
Yeah. Well, and that's where words to me that pop up as you're saying that is, how am I helping them have grit? How am I helping them have confidence and courage, right? But then also I'm asking myself, am I pushing them so hard that they're not going to listen to who they are and they're just going to become a little version of me? Is that what I want? I don't want that either.
Or just doing things that other people have crafted for them. They don't get to live their life, right? We want them to live their life.
And this can get pretty heated amongst a couple as they're talking about, especially when it comes to activities like sports and music and academics and even clubs that they're kind of interested in. We want them to be a part of. It could be like scouts or other things like that. I see so many parents who the kid is wanting to quit scouts and they're like, "You're so close to Eagle, go get it." And there's a lot of pushing there. And so all these things are loaded with money and time and identity and comparing yourself to other families. And so, we're really big on not just using this podcast, Sarah, to like give parents advice on raising kids, but really this is about us reflecting on ourselves as parents and what's going on in us through this. And I think this topic very much reveals something very different about each of us and kind of also reveals to us what we think about these topics of perseverance and grit and confidence and how they're developed.
Right. Yeah, it's one that's very, very true for us. It's something that's come up a lot in our parenting. It's something I feel like we're figuring out, it's a day-to-day kind of thing. And this is a big picture way that helps guide you as you're figuring out, is this a back off moment or a push moment?
Yeah. So before we continue on the podcast, take a moment and kind of see, where do you tend to land? If you're listening, do you tend to push or do you tend to back off? Today, we want to find a middle ground where it's not about pressure, but it's also not about permissiveness either. But we want it to be about intentional support that's going to build resilience without breaking trust. So like you're wanting to build a resilient kid that you still have a trusting relationship with, okay? So first of all, this is super normal. This happens in a lot of families. I mean, pretty much every family that I've helped throughout the years, there's been some element of this. But in particular, this has come to light more and more, especially it's very difficult in divorce situations or, where a couple one feels like that's their job, is to be the pushy one. And the other parent, like you said, feels like they've got to back off, but then they feel like there'll be judgment about that. So really finding that middle ground is really important. How do we help develop this in ourselves and in our kids, right? So parents aren't usually afraid of quitting in general. What they're afraid of is raising adults who quit when things get uncomfortable. Yes. Yes. I do not want to raise kids who quit when it gets uncomfortable.
You go to that worst case scenario, you're dealing with an 8-year-old, but in your head, you're thinking, you're 32, you can't.
You said 8-year-old, I'm doing 4-year-old or something like that. If you're already quitting at 4, you're going to, oh my God, when things get hard at 16, you're going to be quitting then too.
Yeah, but no. That actually, I was going to say 16 is my next age. Okay. We're also really terrified when we see this in a 16-year-old because we think they're already 32.
Yes.
And we need to realize that even at 16, we're still looking too far ahead.
Yeah.
We need to be in this moment.
Yeah. And we start saying things like, you need to finish what you start, right? Hard things build character. They do. Yeah. No pain, no gain. and there's truth in all that stuff, right? There's truth in all that. But the problem comes when perseverance gets confused with endurance at all cost. And I got to say, I do get that confused sometimes, because I definitely would be the person who would err on the side of enduring and not quitting, even when it's probably a good idea just to quit and bail.
Yeah.
So here's an important, I love this reframe, Sarah, as we discuss this reframe that we want to hold on loosely throughout the episode, okay, throughout this discussion, is perseverance is not about staying no matter what. Like when we say it that way, it does go, yeah, that seems kind of dumb. Like there are situations you probably just need to quit that job or need to, like, it's not going. I mean, there is something important about that I can definitely value, because I have quit jobs that were just not healthy or good to be at. The culture was not good, but perseverance is really, and I want you to listen closely to this. Here's what perseverance is. It's really about learning how to struggle without losing yourself. Tell me more about that. What does that mean?
Right. So you got the whole just stick with it always mentality. And I think there's a lot of value there. I love the value of being able to stick through hard things. But a lot of times, somewhere along the way, and it's usually this slow thing, you're losing yourself. You're not listening to it's time to change direction, but you're so focused on hanging in there that you don't see those messages pop up.
Yeah.
And that's actually, there's a whole lot of wisdom there to know what's going on for me here, and do I need to change course? Instead, we just view it as a bailout instead of time to change course, because I listened to the messages coming along the way.
You know, this may be something that none of our listeners would think of, but as you're talking about this, I'm thinking, I even had this mentality about food as a kid, you know, that you were kind of taught, if it's on your plate, you're supposed to clean it, you know? And even if you're like, but I'm kind of full, it doesn't matter. Just you persevere through that meal and you eat it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas something, as you've been, you know, pretty intentional about helping our kids listen to that inner voice inside, which I definitely think is important, is sometimes our kids will be eating dessert even, and they'll be like, no, I'm done. I don't need more. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you always persevere through dessert. I don't care. I don't care what you feel. Like, that thought doesn't even cross my mind. If I'm eating dessert or eating, I might look at a plate and I'll be like, yeah, I'll just eat the rest. I feel really full, but who cares? You know? And it's like, that's a small example how even in my home, quitting was not seen as an option. Like, you don't even quit what you're eating. You know, there was some judgment or it was almost like you don't value what you were given. You know, you're just throwing it away.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm full. Yeah, but maybe you shouldn't have. You took that much. Now you need to eat it. You know.
Right. And you see it even in places of I'm tired.
Yeah.
But it's like,
yes.
I mean, you just keep going.
Keep taking some caffeine.
You can get sleep later.
Yeah, get more
right?
coffee, get an energy drink. Yeah, you're right. Throughout college, it was kind of like that. You don't listen to that. You don't take a nap. You know.
Yeah.
You just push through it. Yeah. So,
and that's what's applauded. It's the person who's taking the extra class and staying up and studying. That's what's applauded. It's not the person who said, you know what, I realized that I needed to drop that class so I could sleep 8 hours at night. No one's applauding the person who chose to sleep 8 hours a night. You know?
Yeah. No, it's good. I remember my senior year, I did that, Sarah. I felt overwhelmed with some of the responsibilities I had my senior year. So I did put off a foreign language class, and I took that at a community college. So I didn't technically graduate till another year after all my friends. But I was like, I can't handle this. I can't be taking this 15 and a half, hour, 18 and a half, whatever it was, and then successfully do the senior year. I need to back off. And it didn't hurt my life. Actually my work gave me a pay like I had graduated,
Yeah.
So we want to, basically, I want you understanding that kids don't grow resilience, or humans don't, by being overpowered, or by being intimidated, or by being forced to do something. They grow resilience by being supported through the challenge. That's an important distinction. This isn't an isolated thing that we want our kids doing. We want them doing it with us. Okay. So let's talk about the brain science, behind perseverance. So that's really what we want to instill in our kids. Is we want to raise resilient kids that know how to persevere. A child's brain is still under construction. It's new. It's still being formed. And the part of the brain responsible for planning or long-term thinking, emotional regulation, and persistence, which is the prefrontal cortex, doesn't fully mature until the mid-20s. So that's really important to keep in mind. And that means kids borrow regulation from us before they can actually do it on their own. So perseverance is not just a character trait, which is how I kind of always saw it as. It's a neurodevelopmental skill, which to me kind of changes something. When you see it as a skill, you're like, oh, that's something they develop over time. Rather than a character trait is like, if they don't have it, I'm failing my kid. I need to instill that in them.
Yeah. And if you think, well into their college years, they're still working on this. Well into the early years of their career, they're still working on this. We really have to realize and put in there, okay, this is something that's building through time. And we're just a part of that. We're adding in our blocks. We're trying to help them learn that balance of listening to myself and knowing I can stick through hard things too. That both are possible. It's not an either or.
I remember even building it when we had kids. Like, there was ways in which being woken up all the time by a crying baby.
I thought you weren't going to make it.
And then like you felt, I can persevere through this. But it was, what I think happens lots of times in that is the couple's doing it alone. Maybe the mom is doing it by herself at night without the dad's support. And I think the more a couple can see this as an opportunity to build resilience in each other, it's meant to be done together. And so, the key concept we want you to kind of see here, or we hope we articulate, is that growth happens in this optimal challenge zone. Okay. And that's the place where something feels hard, something is kind of frustrating or even uncomfortable, but it's still manageable with support. When stress stays in that zone, the brain learns, the brain starts to grow and develop. But when stress becomes chronic or overwhelming, the brain will shift down into survival mode. And in the survival mode, kids don't build grit. They're not getting grit there.
Yeah.
They build, and I know a lot of parents I'm coaching, they've seen this. They build avoidance, they build resentment, and they start to shut down.
Yeah. So it's this sweet spot of, okay, this is hard. And we can kind of push, our kids in this spot of it's hard. I don't feel like going to practice tonight, but we can still go. But, so we hang in there in those tough spots, but you've got to watch, and we're not going to do it perfect, but you're watching for that tipping point where all it is now, I hate this. I resent this. This is too big, too hard. We got to keep in that it's challenging, but I still feel good. And I notice that I'm doing something hard. And once we pass that point, then the brain is just trying to make it through. It's not learning the grit that we hope that they're learning, So we want to stay in that sweet spot, and that can be hard to do. But just saying that in layman's terms, it's like, it's that point where if you run or exercise, you're running and exercising and feeling good about yourself, but you're not that the next 3 days you have to recover because you worked too hard.
You went too hard.
Then your brain is just like, I just got to make it through, versus the learning and the feeling good that comes with, I conquered this manageable mountain.
I see way too many kids doing sports and they're just shut down. And the parents are confused, it seems successful. The kid is going, the kid is no longer
maybe even doing well at
and
it.
And the kid's no longer even complaining about doing it, but the kid just seems kind of shut down. They're just kind of going through the motions. And they'll tell me when I'm talking to them, they feel like they have no choice. I just have to go. My parents are gonna be mad if I don't, So the question, Sarah, like what I heard you say, the question isn't, is this hard? The question is this hard in a way that still feels safe and supported to the kid, right? And going back to even having kids, I think that was part as we were parenting, when parenting is hard, do I feel, is this, yes, this is hard, but is it hard in a way that we still both as a couple feel safe and supported within it? And I think we would all want that, And so let's remember that regulation comes before learning, that kids aren't really learning or getting the skill when they're dysregulated, and connection always comes before growth. So we want to make sure we're helping our kids have that connection. So then really, if we're wanting them to learn perseverance and grit, they're only going to learn it in that by being regulated and being connected. So let's talk about when pushing is healthy, because there are times kids are tentative and they just don't know how to move forward into something that is hard or is uncomfortable.
Right.
And we would never say, don't ever do that. Like there are, and even I've had kids, Sarah, who tell me they need it. Like I need a little push.
Yeah, the push is where growth happens. We know that for ourselves, where you put yourself out there and then you get that joy, that success, that you mature, you grow, and your talents or skills, whatever it is on the job, where you've put yourself and you've pushed yourself, and not to that breaking point where it felt great. And we want that for our kids. We want them to know how to do that.
Yeah. Well, and also what happens sometimes if we back off too early, you do rob your kids of a growth opportunity. And I would think that's where I kind of erred too much on that. I'm like, I don't want to rob my kids of this opportunity, just because they're saying they don't want to do it doesn't mean they actually don't want to do it.
Well, they can lose confidence because then it's like, oh, the moment something's hard, I bail because I can't do anything hard. So it's that, no, you're very capable. I believe in you.
Yeah. So here's some signs to look for. Whenever you are kind of leaning in to give them a little push, you want to be looking for these signs where it's still supportive and it's not harmful. Okay. So one sign is your child is frustrated, but they're still engaged. Okay. Number two is they might complain, but they show up, meaning like show up, like they're present. They're all there. They're interacting. Right.
Yeah.
Number three, they recover emotionally after setbacks. So it's not like, I've had these kids who are playing sports and they're just getting super overwhelmed super easily, and they're like freaking out on the if anything goes bad, they're just just completely a mess, right? So if they're able to bounce back, it's like, oh, okay, cool, this is good. So we don't want it to be too overwhelming to them. They feel proud after effort even if the outcome isn't perfect. So I mean, that's a really great sign. The kid does it.
Really important.
Yeah, they don't feel good about it just when they win, but they can even lose and still feel good about it. You know, they can articulate at least loosely why this matters to them. Like they can kind of like own it a little bit, right? And kind of say, this is why I think doing this activity is important and what I'm getting out of it. Right. Okay. Now, this is where a parent's role is incredibly important because we don't want to become drill sergeants, right? That's not a good thing. Okay. Because we're not running a military, I don't think, in our homes. Okay. But you want to be a steady presence in their life. And so this is where messages like this matter, right? So some important messages that come across us is hard doesn't mean wrong, right? That's a good message.
Yeah. I think that's a great one because just because something hard, kind of going back to what I was saying, is the moment, kids, we can learn, oh, it's hard, stop, but instead we want kids to go, oh, this is kind of hard. And there's something in you that can rise up that go, okay, I can do hard.
Yeah.
And that feels very rewarding,
It does.
right?
Yeah.
So we want to
Feels
build
really
that
good.
into
Yeah.
our kids. We want to have that language. We want to model that,
Yeah.
but not too hard.
Uh-huh.
It's like it's a hard I can do.
Yeah. I love that. You don't have to love every practice to grow here, So like you can actually go to practice, not think it's the best thing in the world, and you can still get better and grow as a person. Yeah.
Yeah, I love even sometimes when I'm doing some work around the house or working and maybe I don't feel like it that day. I might even voice that to my kids. I don't really feel like doing this today. I need to get it done. Oh, look, I got it done. That feels good. To kind of model sometimes I don't feel like getting out of bed to go mow the lawn, to do the dishes, but I did it and look, it's done. It looks great. I love that I did that,
It's funny you brought up the lawn mowing
because
because
I don't actually mow.
I know, but you were actually always confused why, and this is not to say this is something you need to do with your kids, but why I would pick like the hottest part of the day to mow the lawn because it was
I think
I
that's
was modeling to the
ridiculous.
kids. It's hot,
I
but
think
I'm
mowing-
not going to let the heat stop me. I'm going to go do it.
Okay, yeah, I think
I know that's dumb, but I still like it though. I like that they see me do it, but I'm just trying to tell our audience this is how ridiculous my thinking can be. So I'm like, you'd be like, why don't you do it earlier in the day? Well, because I want to do it in the hottest part of the day because I want to let them know the heat doesn't control me. I'm going to go out there and do what's hot.
Okay.
Yeah. And you'd be like, just do it in a cooler part of the
All
day.
right.
Okay. And then the last one is, I believe you can do hard things and I'm right here with you.
Yeah, that always reminds me of that icicle thing, or that ice water.
Oh yeah.
Where if I don't know, we've mentioned it before, but I just really am fascinated by that. Where if one person sticks their feet in ice water by themselves, they can't stay as long as if someone's with them. Again, I think humans are built. We can do harder things longer. Have a better time if we're doing it with other people.
We can go through a lot. What I hear about even kids I've talked to that were Eagle Scouts. I would talk about, man, those campouts though are hard when it's really cold and hot, and they would laugh and say, yeah, every time I didn't want to go on those, but actually some of those ended up being the best because me and my friends just like, this sucks. This is horrible. And I actually remember those the fondest that we somehow suffered together through it.
Yeah.
And I always thought that's something interesting there, right? None of them were like, yeah, it was great that I was completely alone and freezing. It was like I had a friend with me.
Yeah.
And many times when I hear kids say they don't want to do something, it's almost 100% of the time because they don't have a friend doing it with them. They're like, that thing seems kind of boring. Maybe it could be fun, but I don't think it's going to be because my friend's not there. Right. But as soon as they find a friend's going, they're like, yeah, I want to do that. And I think that speaks to this. That something in them maybe unconsciously knows I'm going to get more out of this if I'm with a friend.
And we can do that too. Like sometimes there's times, so you're bringing about the friend thing, but I was just thinking there are times our daughter, but our other kids too, have had, oh man, they really need to clean their room. It's kind of a wreck. They had a really great time, but now they got to clean it up. And even if we haven't gone in there to help, we've just been in the room with them while they did it.
Yeah.
So even something small like that, if your child's going through something hard, maybe they have a friend they can go through it with. Maybe they can't. They just got to do homework at night and there's no one to do it with them. But you can say, you know what, I'm going to sit here and work on some stuff too.
Yeah.
So there's ways that you can be present with your child in their suffering.
Well, and so this kind of pushing that we're talking about, it communicates belief. It communicates confidence instead of pressure. It sends the message to your kid, I trust your capacity. I trust your capabilities. I won't abandon you when it gets uncomfortable. and I'm not forcing you to decide everything before you're ready. It is this kind of gradual, it takes some patience, it takes some time, and it takes some trust that the kid will eventually get there. If I start to believe, he just won't do it because it's hard, then you're going to find yourself pushing way too much. And that leads to the next kind of topic is when pushing becomes too much. Like when that starts to happen, we start to slip over to that. How do you know when you're doing it? How do you know when you've gone from being helpful and supportive to something that's kind of harmful, And so here's a few signs that we kind of noted in just working with couples and parents. And your child experiences, number one, your child experiences persistent dread or anxiety before participating in the activity.
Right. That moment where they hate every practice and every game. You've well crossed that line.
Yes, you have crossed that line for sure. Yeah. Emotional fallout spills into other areas of life, like sleep. They're having a hard time going to bed because they're anxious about it. School is suffering. Relationships are getting hurt.
Right. Like I hate Wednesdays because every Wednesday I have to go do this thing,
Or all day they're angry at their siblings.
The day before they're already thinking tomorrow is this and this.
Yeah, you can see they're on edge the whole time, right? Number 3, you notice physical symptoms like stomach aches, headaches, or they're shutting down.
Yeah.
Right?
It's their, because even though they've maybe voiced it, but their body is now talking for them.
Yeah. And then finally, number 4 is there's a loss of joy and just a loss of feeling safe, and so you don't see any joy coming. I mean, I think that's the point of the activity. It isn't just to do it. You hope joy is a part of it, right? And this isn't just about a kid having occasional bad days. This is about patterns that you're noticing, right? And you want to be thoughtful about these, right? And so here's an important distinction. Walking away is not failure when it's done with reflection, support, and dignity. So I want to say that again. Walking away from something, even as adults, is not failure when it's done with reflection, support, and dignity. Backing off can actually protect the things parents care about most. So actually, you backing off can actually do this cool thing of create space for the kid to actually own it themselves.
Yeah.
Instead of just suffering and doing it. Yeah.
Just doing it for you instead of doing it for themselves.
Yeah. Yes. So we want to kind of talk about some benefits we've seen in our own parenting our own kids when we have backed off, like when we haven't, because like I said, my tendency is to keep pushing. And your tendency was like, hey, let's just back it off. Let's back it off. And it was hard for me to trust that sometimes. But what I did notice when we did that, when it came to sports, when it came to other activities, it protects trust in the parent-child relationship. Like what I saw in our relationship, but also with kids I help, Sara, is kids start to go, oh, my voice matters.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I've heard, yes. My opinion matters. What I think and feel is real.
Yep.
Because otherwise you're sending this message like, oh, you don't like it? Well, that doesn't matter.
I'm a baby or something. I can't seem to do it.
Yeah. Sweeping it all away, you just do it.
Yeah. And second, it preserves your child's sense of agency, meaning their autonomy, that who they are and what they desire is different than you, and that's important.
Yeah. It's really, because a side note, we won't go there, but you want to feed kids' ability to have agency, motivation, desire to do things. And if they're always just doing the thing they don't want, you're kind of killing that. And we want to feed agency. We want to feed kids listening to what motivates them and using that as a driving force in their life, because that will carry them through lots of different things in life.
Yeah. And the third, it increases the likelihood that they'll ever try it again. So like and they may decide never to come back to it, but lots of kids do. I hear a lot of kids do end up coming back around to it because they're like, oh, I actually did like it, but it was almost like I couldn't even tell them, my parents, I liked it, because if I did, they pushed me even harder.
Right. And it wasn't even their choice. But if they can walk away, then they might decide, you know what, I actually did like that, or I miss it. But they need that chance. We've probably all had that experience in life, or it might be a branch of it. Maybe they love music, but they didn't want to play piano, but they want to sing, so you see things kind of shift, and you see the child driving that, which is going to be a lot more powerful in their lives than if something else is driving it.
Yeah. Well, and also it's cool, as you say that, you begin to see who they are.
Yeah.
Instead of them just doing what you think is important to them. Yeah. And it's really cool to see that blossom. Yeah.
Right. Well, and you can be afraid that they're missing out on this thing, oh, you piano, you're missing out on that. Yeah. But really, if you think about, if they're always choosing piano, then they are missing out on other things too. And so Yeah.
There's so many things. You can't do them all, right?
Yeah.
And when a kid does feel trapped, Sarah, they don't actually build perseverance when they feel trapped. All they do is get better and better at resistance. They get better and better saying, I don't want to do this. I'm so frustrated with the fact that I keep having to do this, right?
Yeah.
So the last kind of section that we wanted to hit is kind of how do we, okay, so we talked about if we push, here's some positive elements of it. Here's ways we know we're pushing too much. But now we want to do this principle called the circle back principle, okay? The past matters, this part of the section matters so much because many kids actually do, like you said, they'll return later on their own when all the pressure is removed, when they finally feel the freedom to pick it. They circle back when their skills actually mature and then maybe they can be actually more successful at it, or when their confidence grows, or when their identity feels safer, like it's not all wrapped up in whether or not they do it. And then also when their autonomy increases, like the sense of who I am is important and then doing what I want to do is important.
I'm choosing this. Yeah.
Parents who allow respectful exits often raise kids where this happens, okay, is where one, they re-engage voluntarily. So the kid will re-engage voluntarily. Two, the kid can take ownership. Three, they persist longer the second time. Oh my gosh, I've seen that so many times. Kids who were doing a certain sport and then they wanted to quit. And then when they chose to do it, there wasn't, are you going to practice? They started doing it because now they loved it. They wanted to do it. And it actually sometimes is even harder. And yet they're choosing to do it because it's theirs,
Yeah. And instead of having to be like, hey, you need to go practice, you need to go, you see the kid rise up and doing those things on their own because they've got that internal drive.
And then I love this. They start to trust themselves more deeply rather than questioning themselves like we were talking about before,
Yeah.
And so this reframes quitting. So take a moment, think about it. This reframes quitting as just information.
Yep.
Like it's not a verdict. It's not like, oh, you quit now. I mean, I know I thought this, Sarah, like you quit now, you can never go back. Like this, you could never come back.
And you're going to be a quitter forever in all things.
Yes. And instead, really the whole point of doing all this, perseverance is part of it. It's also like gaining information about what you like, what you don't like,
right?
What you're good at, what you're not good at, right? Like everything you want your kids to do, they're not going to all be good at it,
Right. And it's building that curiosity, which is going to serve them their whole lives. What is happening inside of me? Why am I walking away? And that's what we want to grow that ability.
Yeah. And this aligns perfectly with researchers. Effort grows best when it's connected to meaning and agency and not fear. So if they are not afraid, then these things that you're actually wanting to grow in them can actually happen.
Afraid that they'll be labeled a quitter, afraid to disappoint you, afraid they'll never be able to do this again if they walk away now.
Yes.
So I just want to frame what fear can look like. And we don't want that to be your motivator.
Yeah. So here's some grounding principles that we try to hold to, and we just encourage you to do as well. So number one, finish commitments when possible, but revisit ownership. So I think finishing commitments is great. And we can talk about that, right? But who's really owning that? And that's what a lot of our conversations have been with kids when it comes to activities is like, who is the one really choosing this, And that's important to just reflect on that and really help have that discussion with the kid because that's going to help you all throughout their life. Number two, separate your fear from your child's experience. I think that's really challenging.
It is. Because we have this great ability to look long term, but it kind of sometimes works against us because we really do feel this pressure. And maybe your child does need to mature and they are growing this and we know they're growing it because of the brain science, but it's really hard not to get to worst case or, oh no, what's happening here? We're raising a quitter. This is, all my fault.
Yeah. Once you get rid of the fear too, then you can do step three, which is ask reflective questions instead of trying to persuade or convince. I've never done that. I've never tried to persuade or convince, never tried to make a compelling argument as to why they should continue. No, but I love when you ask the reflective questions, you get some surprising answers. You really get to know your kid more deeply. And also you help your kids start to ask them self-reflective questions. And they start to go, do I really want to not do this? And they then can, if they want to keep doing it, they persuade themselves, instead of you being the one.
Makes your job easier.
Yes. Number four is it also preserves dignity if your child exits an activity. So it doesn't seem like when they quit that, like you said, there's all this shame of like, you're a quitter, you don't do hard things, And then the fifth one is it leaves the door open without hovering or guilt, So it's like it leaves the door open for them to circle back, like we said. And here's a powerful reflection question for you as a parent, okay? So just to reflect on this. Am I protecting my child's growth, or am I protecting my own anxiety and fear? Right? So just be thinking about that when it comes to these activities. So the goal here for Sarah and I isn't to raise kids who never quit. Now, that might have been my goal early on. Like my goal now isn't to raise kids who never quit. The goal is to raise kids who and let this seep in, who know how to struggle, reflect, adjust, and re-engage without losing themselves along the way. That does sound better. That does sound better. Yeah. My previous goal was short-sighted.
Yeah. Put that up on the wall.
And that is real perseverance. And that is what is going to last a lifetime.
Yep.
Right?
Good stuff. We got to remind ourselves of this all the time.
Yeah. And so I know these questions are going to be coming up, especially as you're going into the spring and there's all these opportunities. Summer camps, that's a big one. So many parents like, I want them to go to this summer camp. And you got to sign up for it. It like costs a lot of money. And all.
I mean, it feels like it's January, but within just a couple months, you're having to decide all the things to get your child's spot saved, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so these are great conversations to have about those camps, about those activities, and like really to reflect upon your own fear and anxiety of them missing out and them, oh my gosh, if they miss out on that.
As the scholarship.
Exactly. They'll never know if they would love that and like all that. And somewhat having just trust that being connected with them, being with them in it that's the one thing you don't want to lose above all that stuff.
Oh, yes. That's the thing that you want your whole life.
Yeah. So I hope this was really helpful and gave you some real tools on knowing how to sometimes push, sometimes back off, and to really do this in connection and relationship with your kid because they want to do it with you. They don't want to do it on their own. So if this is helpful to you, please definitely leave a review, a comment, share this with other parents that are struggling with this, with sports and other kind of activities. And just really think this will help equip them to not have these beautiful things, beautiful opportunities, be a tool of separation and resistance and all that stuff in their relationship with their kid. So hope you enjoyed the episode today and that you have a wonderful day. The Art of Raising Humans podcast should not be considered or used as counseling, but for educational purposes only.